You say in your book that humans have forgotten to relate health to health. But I think it's something that is increasing. So the more and more people are trying to relate health to health instead
heart
of...
to heart.
Heart to heart, yeah. How do you... what do you mean with that?
Well, it is the aspect of feeling experience rather than the context of what we want to achieve in a heart-to-heart communication. Many people refer to heart as being something nice or something good, when in fact it is the experience of self without anything, what I call the being, without anything necessarily qualifying this experience. And this, I feel, is largely still missing. Obviously, we're moving, and I'm part of that vein, I'm part of that generation, if you wish, that is calling for more of this quality in life. What I'm talking about in the inner woman basically is a quality. And I feel that this ability to distinguish and inject quality into everyday mundane things is absent. Now, women is basically very absorbent, reflective, and containing structure.
But I see more and more men taking part in kinds of rituals, in kind of therapies, in kinds of circles. I think it's not. Maybe it was in the past so. But I think that the need for a more close, warm relationship is increasing also in men.
Oh, I would agree with there, and I'm very happy about that. I simply feel that we need to do it more, and we need to do it not just in the context of inner work or even emotional work, because it goes beyond the emotion. It's not the subjective self. What I'm calling for is a quality, and a sustaining quality, something that we can fill a whole room with. It is not tangible, and yet it is very feeling experience. And this is woman's role, if you wish. Not that man can't do it, but women trigger it. It's like triggering the inner woman in a man, but it's the woman that triggers it. She's active at that level, whereas she's receptive physically, mentally also. But we're very, very active at this level, and we're not aware of what we're projecting all the time. Instead, we project emotionally. So what I'm looking for is cleaning up our active way a bit. And the groups, and of course a whole New Age movement behind us, and everything that's happening now, which is more ecological, is based on that thought, on that principle of heart to heart, of more depth. And I guess what I'm doing now is just qualifying it a bit more and asking for it to be more conscious and more widespread, perhaps.
Yes, this concept of emotional brain, it is entering also the companies and the corporations even, no?
Yeah, but it's still emotional. You see, you have to go through the emotional to get to the other, or do we? Let's get an example here. For example, silence and meditation is something which is very, very masculine, in the sense that it's, if you take, like, for example, the Buddhist vein, you can attain that silence, but the quality of the silence is not a man's world, it is the woman's world. And she doesn't get into that silence unless she goes through the whole upheaval of experiencing herself feeling.
I don't agree with you completely, but monks have been doing this kind of experiences of silence for centuries.
Yes, I'm not saying that the silence is feminine. I'm saying the quality of it. Yes, it is a man's domain. In fact, we are not basically very silent beings, women. We're not. We're turmoils. We're very intense. Even the most quiet and receptive, let's say, caricature of the Oriental woman. We're very, very active in this inner sense. So silence doesn't come easy unless it goes through the experience of self that we're calling for. But I'm calling for the, let's say, the end result. Let's understand this and get to the end result. But there's a question that I have for you, which is very related to what we were talking before, which is what your most recent research is based on. And that has a lot to do with this absorption, receptive quality of women.
I've been working, it's not too recent, I've been working for that, so on this field for a couple of years. It's about the women's diseases.
Yeah.
There are new trend of diseases related to chemicals, to environmental chemicals, to domestic chemicals, to drugs, to medicines, that have a very different impact on women than on men. And most of the victims of multiple chemical syndrome, for instance, are women. Most of the victims, the patients of electromagnetic contamination are women. They suffer more the effects of the telephone antennas or from electric wire cables. So. And I think it's interesting because it's a new form of it's at one side it's an expression of a different constituency, of a biological difference, but at the other side is also a question of what are the priorities of the sanitary systems, because it's very interesting to read about that. It's a woman, I think she's a cardiologist in Barcelona, that have established that the parameters to measure a heart infarct are based on males, not on women. And, on male cases. So it is very different the way it has to be treated. A woman heart infarct and a man.
Heart attack,
Yes, and most of the women that suffer a heart attack get more negative results because the statistics are based on male cases, no? And I think it's also an interesting subject to work on.
I think it's fascinating, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. I mean, I've known basically women are more psychic. There's masses of male psychics, obviously, but our nature is more uncontrolled and unacknowledged, let's say, influence to these subtle electromagnetic forces around us, which cause contamination and cause confusion, and obviously result in physical diseases.
It's a book called Woman, Health and Power, written by a medical doctor called Carme Valls in Barcelona. It's very interesting.
And it's written in Spanish?
In Spanish, yeah.
Okay. Do you know if there's a translation into English?
I don't know, but the Spanish title is Mujer, Salud y Poder.
Okay, good. Well, is there anything more that you can tell us about? Was I able to help you understand a bit more that you did not know before about the inner woman? Is there something new that we can...
Well, I was very interested. I didn't, unfortunately, read the book, the whole book, but
You read parts of it?
Yes, I read part of it. Your game, so this play with from the Virgin and the Magdalena is interesting for me.
Okay.
How do you categorize both aspects?
Well, you see, there's on the principle of archetypes, and archetypes do exist besides being on the theoretical or ideological plane. There are people very much. I myself come from a gamma of society. Obviously, I've been educated like everybody else, and compete in the world. But my own experience has been very much, let's say, on the priestess inner aspect of life. Whereas I was talking yesterday with somebody who's totally in the external, creative, doing world. Like between us, we recognize a balance, which many of the modern women are having in themselves, but that our generation still did not have. And the Magdalene and the Virgin are these aspects of ourselves, I think aspects of every woman, where the fullness of the purity, no matter what, I mean, this is something you probably as a male can appreciate better than we can directly, that there is a purity to woman, no matter how contaminated she might feel. It is that she's a holder of this magical power, if you wish, of this depth, of this abyss inside us. And at the same time, the ability that we have as the Magdalene to manipulate currents of energy through the body, through the emotions, and even through our minds, how we can influence and really get men to do just about anything we want. This is coming from a woman.
Oh, I read about Magdalene as a victim, not as a manipulator.
This is the church's version of it. There's always two sides to something. There was somebody I was talking to also who has the experience of being called a victim. And I think we really seriously need to look at this phenomenon. Are we victims? And I include myself with all the women. And those who have been through a tremendous, obvious pattern of victimization. Just how far is this victimization victim, or how far do we attract it? How do we contribute to it? I think it's a whole topic that has to be looked at impartially.
It's true. It's interesting. Victims and victimization are not the same, always. And it's also a way of reducing the capacity of people, women or men, to be responsible for their lives. No?
Yeah. Many times when we deal with the repairing aspect, with the correction, with the healing aspect of a victim, we do not take into consideration, especially if it's a woman, how deeply a woman feels her accuser or attacker and empathizes with him. This is a subject that women will recognize instantly. It's harder for a man, I think. I hate to be making the difference, but there is. I mean, my whole purpose now is to bring this out so that we can come closer. When we are in difficult relationships, in abused relationships, for example, why does a woman keep going back? She doesn't keep going back just because she's afraid of the man. There's an aspect in us that understands him, that wants to heal him, that wants to forget and be able to give him a chance to forget about what he's doing, let's say, or what is happening. And it's the women's aspect of savior, let's say. And this is ignored, because when we are repairing, let's say, the effects caused on the victim, or the victimization, we neglect to help the man with whom she is empathizing to understand where he was coming from. We just accuse him. We don't give him as much help either.
Interesting.
Well, thank you, Pedro. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. So now